Have you ever felt like you're in this weird limbo stage of life? Like your old version has gone, but you haven't fully stepped into the new version of you or your business, whatever season you're currently in. Now, I'm going to be really honest with you because right now I feel like I'm in this strange transitional limbo period, both in life and in business, in so many aspects of my life as well. So I've been in very much a stage of reflection lately and feeling like I'm really being called to fully arrive and shift into a new chapter. And that doesn't mean burning everything down or starting everything over, but to move differently, to move slower, more intentionally, with more space, more alignment. And I've realized that a big part of that is letting go of old ways of working that were built from stress, pressure, or just trying to prove something, whether that was to myself or to others, and trying to live up to certain expectations. Because honestly, that's not the vibe that I want for my future self. That's not how I want to be operating in 6 months, 12 months' time. And it's spring. This is the time of year where I really do tend to check in on myself. I don't believe in like this whole new year, new me thing back in January. I actually believe that we can constantly check in with ourselves. And particularly in spring, it's like a seasonal reset. We're moving from the cold, dark nights of winter into opportunity, into growth times, into bloom. So I'm really checking in with myself right now to see if I am still building something that supports my life, or if I'm slipping into patterns of saying yes, or pushing my boundaries, pushing myself too hard, making things more complicated than they need to be, to make sure that I arrive in the place that I want to be in 6 months, 12 months time, and don't stay stuck and feeling like I'm going to continue to be where I am right now. Because like I say, I'm in this weird transitional period. I'd rather like not be here. I'd rather be in that new phase of life in this next 6 months. So if you've been feeling like that as well, you've been feeling a little bit disconnected or a bit stretched, or maybe even feeling a little bit stuck in this current season that you're in, this current chapter, I think you're going to really enjoy this episode, because we are going to be talking about this weird limbo period today with my guest, Alka Martine. She's a Buddhist psychologist and holistic wellbeing business mentor who lives in Bali, originally from South Africa, and she is someone I really instantly connected with, because even though we've lived different versions of life, we've walked very similar paths. And especially when it comes to struggling with our own self-worth and figuring out how to build a business that really feels good for us to run. Now, Alka said something in this conversation today that really stuck with me, which was, if we don't walk forwards, we either stay stuck in the present or we stay stuck in the past. And that reminded me of why I do the work right now, and why I'm so passionate about helping other people build online businesses that are actually sustainable, joyful, and built around their energy, their story, and their version of success. Because if we're just recreating the same burnout and the same patterns and routines that we had in our 9 to 5s, then what's the point of starting our own business? We might as well go back to the security of the corporate job. So if you're a beginner in business right at the beginning of your journey, or you're thinking about starting a business very soon, I've created something that can really help you, and it's called the Freedom Model Method Foundations. It is a program where I walk you through exactly how to start your online business, but build it in a way that works for you, not in a way that you work for the business. So many people make that mistake, that when they're first starting out a business, they build a business that keeps them trapped. They think they have to keep working in the same way they did in their lives, and that is absolutely not the case. If you're new to entrepreneurship, if you're new to business, maybe you haven't learned that lesson yet. And I don't want you to learn it the hard way. So let me teach you how to set something up that really works for you from day one, so that you can work smarter, not harder, in your entrepreneurship journey. I'm going to leave the link in the show notes, but for now, let's get into this beautiful and grounding conversation with Alka. This is exactly what I needed to hear today, and we're going to be diving into well-being, self-worth, procrastination, limiting beliefs, and why doing less can actually lead to more. Trigger warning, there is conversations about eating disorders in this podcast, so if you do have any sensitivity around that subject, please feel free to skip through that part.
Hi, everybody. I'm Alka. I'm South African, living in beautiful Bali. One thing about me that you need to know is I am a human holic. I am absolutely addicted to human beings. What makes them function? You know, we forget to see ourselves as the incredible little amazing miracles that we are. We tend to focus so much on our meat suit, our physical being, that we don't see who we essentially are, and that is a spirit having a human experience. We are so much more than what we think we are. And what I love to do with my clients is peel the little layers, like a little onion of your being. What makes you you? What makes you think the way you think? What makes you act the way you do? Because you are this little layer of the universe. Every single part of you is different, and you're like a little treasure chest. Once you take the one gold coin out, you discover a little emerald, and once you discover the emeralds, you discover your little rubies. And I absolutely love that about being a human being.
That's so good. I love that description so much. And how did you discover your inner layers, your inner Ruby? Tell me that journey.
Well, to be very, very honest, for most of my life, especially as a child and a teenager and a young adult, I didn't see myself as a treasure chest. I absolutely hated myself. I hated the way I look. I hated the way I sound. I just wasn't in love with myself. I didn't see myself as a treasure, but rather a physical human being that needs to be perfect. And this distorted idea of who I am led into an eating disorder. So I had this yo-yo thing about I would starve myself to the anorexic version of myself and then again binge eat until the more fuller version of myself. And at the age of 19, 20, I had this experience. I was extremely overweight and I was walking home. And at that stage, my meals were basically, I'm a chocoholic. Beside a human holic, I love chocolates. So my money that I was bringing in, I was living on my own, studying, working. I had to choose. Do I eat food or do I eat chocolate? So I would buy a slab of chocolate and I'll divide it into three, and that would be my breakfast, lunch, and dinner kind of thing. So I was extremely malnourished. I was underfed. I weighed way too less for my height. And I was walking home one night from work and I stepped off the curb and I twisted my ankle and I fractured my ankle. So the guy that I was seeing at the moment took me to a hospital and I had plaster of Paris. And I remember buying a vegetarian burger on my way back home. And at that stage, I only allowed myself 3 bites of every meal that I was eating. So I had 3 bites of my vegetarian burger and I threw it in the dustbin. I didn't keep anything at home because I didn't want to tempt myself to eat. And I went outside and I threw the burger in the dustbin. And I woke up at about 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Obviously, my body needed more nourishment because it needed to heal a part of itself. And I was starvingly hungry. And I remember hopping down the stairs with my plaster of Paris foot and everything and scratching in a dustbin for this burger because I had nothing else in the house to eat by choice. And I remember looking down at myself and seeing my ribs, seeing my spine, seeing my shoulder blades, and seeing this skeleton part of my body. And something said to me, my angel, you're going to die. If you don't change this, you're going to die. So I studied nutrition. I wanted to learn how to make food my friend rather than my enemy. I drank, I don't know how many copious amount of green juices, green smoothies. I then went to the other side that everything had to be healthy. But the whole time still, there was this part of me that didn't feel fulfilled. And I did a yoga teacher training to get more mindful, to get more connected. And I remember attending a workshop at the yoga studio that I did my first yoga teacher training. And they told us the story about the monks that would self-immolate, that would put themselves on fire in protest of the Chinese government at that time taking over Tibet. The guys told us our whole story, and I was absolutely fascinated by it because a monk to me mentally is one of the strongest people that I know. You know, if you can sit and meditate for 40 days without eating, without having to go to the bathroom, without getting thirsty, it is just mind blowing. And yet, when he told the story, he said that most of the monks at some or other point started screaming. And that was my big aha moment. And I thought, you know what? That's the thing. We forget that we are not just a physical body, but we are emotional body. We are a spiritual body. And even though your mind is so strong, if you neglect the physical body at some or other point, it's going to stick its hand up and say, hey, I'm also a part of you. And the same with the physical body. If you just focus on the physical body, your mental or spiritual body at some or other point are going to have a desperate cry for attention, to say, I am also part of you. And in that point, I realized that I have to see myself as something more than what I did see myself. I was focused on my physical side for so long that I didn't see the deeper side of me. I am not who I thought I was.
Wow, very powerful story. And thank you so much for sharing all of the things that you experienced and went through. It's interesting when I have these conversations with people, because a lot of people, different journeys, but like same message, right? Like where so much of their healing or self-development or like entrepreneurial journey has come from a place of where they didn't have that self-worth and they were sick of themselves almost. They couldn't continue like that because at some point they've probably reached a breaking point. And it sounds like, and you can correct me if I've misinterpreted this, but it sounds like you reached a breaking point where you suddenly then saw something so much bigger than what you'd been focused on before. And that comes from being expanded by other things that are happening around you. In your case, it was through the monks situation, which I think I've had very similar experiences in my own journey as well. And so I can completely relate to seeing that. And then something switches and then you're like, now I can make a change. But why do you think it is that so many people get to that point before they make a change? Because all of that information, I guess, has probably been like orbiting you, but suddenly then your eyes open and you're like, okay, now I see what needs to happen. Now I see what I need to do next. Like, why do you think it takes to get to that point of anguish and despair, I guess, to then start making the changes?
From my own personal journey is, if I had continued that way, I wouldn't have seen some of us. I always say to my clients, some of us are really quick learners. You bump your toe, you have a table there and you walk past that little table 2 or 3 times and you bump your toe and you move the table. Some people have to break their toe against the table before they actually move the table out of the way. And we are conditioned. For me, it was much about conditioning. I remember it. I grew up in a house that was very much about being perfect. We had to be really good in order for people to like us. It was about, what are the people going to say? You can't do that, So I feel that it's this whole mixture. We are like this whole soup, if we can use the analogy of a soup, that the carrot is the beliefs that you bring in from your parents. And the potatoes is the beliefs that you bring in from yourself. The stock is the things that people have said to you that you have taken to heart. So you're this huge, big chemical soup of all these situations. And then once you become aware, bring the soup to the boiling point, you can start dissecting everybody. I don't know anybody out there, or the people that inspired me, that is out there, that has made an impact in people's lives by not going through adversity, by not going through something that somebody can relate to.
I agree. All of the people that I'm most inspired by have like come from a very difficult situation and been able to completely transition that. And I see that in myself as well. I see that I have gone through quite a lot of difficult situations and always overcome them. And my main motivation, I remember the first time like I experienced quite a bad period of depression in like 2018, I think it was. And I remember just feeling like, I have to get out of this. Like, I don't want to be in this situation anymore. And I think ever since then, I've always kind of had this mentality of like, let's just keep going. Let's keep moving on to the next thing anyway. But that specific one was like the hardest thing to get out of. And then ever since then, it's always been like, okay, I'm facing adversity, but I know I can get through it. It's not particularly comfortable. It's not very easy. There might be very difficult situations, a lot of stress, a lot of trauma or whatever. But it's still like, I still see the light at through the other end of the tunnel, which I think is the key to those people that are the ones that then can come back and teach you something, can come back and expand you, can come back and show you what is actually possible for you to achieve. And essentially, I guess, like, if we go back to you talking about the monks, essentially that's most monks have gone through those adversities, or like have had a difficult time, and they go to the monastery to find themselves, to find peace, to be able to learn all of the teachings, and then they're able to then go back and teach
Yeah.
everybody else. So it's a very similar journey, I guess.
Yeah. And that's why so many of my clients that come to me feel that they don't have value. They don't have something to offer the world. But your story, your experiences that you have gone through is already of value, is
Mm.
already has the power to transform, to change somebody's life.
I completely agree. And actually, like, my method that I teach with my own clients is like about building a business based on your own skills, your own passions, your own experiences, because you are the expert in those things, right? Like, so you have that ability to teach. But I think what a lot of people get confused by when they are starting something on their own is that they have to learn this whole new skill set and then go after something completely different to what they've had before. And that is absolutely not the case. That at that point, you're going to feel like you're starting from scratch. And I completely understand why people are like, I'm starting my life all over again. Well, no, actually, you don't have to. You've already got foundations here. You've already got experience. You've got skills. You've got lived experiences that you can share with others. You just need to learn how to pivot those and then offer some in a different way.
And then, you have clients that have got 10, 20, 30 certifications, and they still feel they're not qualified to start a business.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
Well,
amazing.
I think there's a lot to be said there around like procrastination, right? Like, you're gonna keep thinking you need to get certified in XYZ. Let's just say, I don't know, you're a naturopath and you've already got like the ground level certification, but you're going to start getting extra certifications to qualify you for all of these different things. To be honest, it's just distraction, because you've already got what you need. You've probably already got the knowledge. Yeah, don't get me wrong, it's great to learn. It's always great to keep learning, but you're going to put off starting something because you think you can't get it until you're up here, when actually you can get it whilst you're down here and learn as you go. And I think it's procrastination. And a lot of the times people procrastinate because their nervous system is unstable. And then a lot of that is linked back to the self-worth piece. So it's like, if we work backwards, it really does keep coming back to this pop point that you've spoken so much about, which is the self-worth.
Yes, definitely. And with the procrastination and everything as well, I always say the minute you have that dream, when you have that vision of creating a business or doing talks or doing anything, that shows that now is the time.
Mm.
You don't have that dream when you're not ready. You start having that dream when you are ready, when there's something deeper inside of you saying, I've outgrown this identity. I need to step into the next identity. And then we get dissatisfied in our current jobs. We get dissatisfied with life. We get dissatisfied with our relationships and thinking those are the things. But we've just outgrown our identity, which we don't believe we have the courage to we can step into the
Mm.
next identity.
It's very true. We have so many different identities, but I think the people that feel stuck are the ones that try and hold on to the one that they had before and don't let it go. How can we make that transition more comfortable? Like, how can we start really recognizing that we are just going through an identity shift and we will land eventually? But like, what's the process? Because obviously, when we're talking about self-worth, and you mentioned about the soup earlier, where we're like made up of so many different soup components, right? And all of that is linked back to like limiting beliefs around ourselves, which can then really be very prominent when you're going through like that identity shift. So how do we navigate this crazy in between period? And I'm asking because I'm also going through that stage right now.
There's one thing I absolutely love about Buddhism, Buddhist psychology, is there's all these beautiful little stories. And there's this beautiful story about the Buddhist monk that he was poor, poor, poor. And the only possession he had was his bowl, his little clay bowl. And he used this clay bowl to, when he was teaching people, for people to gift him with energy, with money to use to buy food. So the clay bowl was for him to receive nourishment, to eat his food in, but also to receive nourishment, to get the nourishment for his body that he needs. And one day he was walking down the pathway and he tripped, and the bowl fell out of his robe's pocket and the bowl broke. And everybody was so around him, was so concerned for him, like, this is your only possession. You broke your only possession. We're so sorry. We'll give you a new bowl. And he turned around and he said, why? It served its purpose. And nothing in life is permanent. Nothing in life is forever. And I'm a firm believer that we all have attachment issues, not just materialistic things, but we are so attached to the stories we've told ourselves about ourselves. We are so attached to who we think we are and what we can do that we create our world and our business around that. And if we look around us, there is nothing in life that is permanent. Nothing. You know, we spoke about Bali and Thailand and the development. There's forever, it's changing. Seasons are changing. If you even look at nature, snakes are constantly shedding their skin. You know, there's a summer, there's a winter, there's a spring, there's an autumn. Everything around us is constantly changing. And yet we feel we can't change. We get scared by stepping into a new chapter, by creating not a new identity, but stepping into a bigger version of ourselves, a version that is more fulfilled, deeper, more connected than what it was. We don't stay the same. We age. You know, everything in nature changes, but yet we are the ones that are attached to certain things, to certain outcomes, to certain beliefs.
It's true. I wonder how different it is for people that have grown up in like city. We spoke a little bit about this just before we jumped on the call, but for people that have grown up in cities where it's like hustle culture, go 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 mode, and you're very conditioned to just like slot into the way things are, and that doesn't really accommodate, or like it does accommodate for change, but in like a way that's not like self-development change. It's all like goal oriented change, like career progression change, that kind of thing, rather than like you as a person change. But whereas if you grew up in nature, I wonder if there's like a difference between the two, because when you grow up in nature, you're seeing that directly in front of your eyes, whereas in the city you don't see that. Like that it's a very different outer experience that you're having in your environment, and I wonder if that directly impacts you internally as well.
Of course, it definitely does. Everything around you impacts your nervous system, impacts the way you see life. But even if you do grow up in a city, it's not that prevalent, but you have a pot plant in your house. You know, and the pot plant it goes from a little seed, it grows, it has a flower, the flower dies, the pot plant dies. You've got to buy something new. You step outside. In London, there's snow during winter. So there is little glimpses, but in a city, we are more conditioned to not see that because of the past.
Mm. Exactly. So a lot of it is, so much of it is conditioning, isn't it? And depending on like which environment, the people that you've been around, the schools that you went to. So I think we're conditioned to believe that we have to be this one certain way, and that's the way that we have to do. So as soon as something then knocks you off that path, whether that's like a personal circumstance, a life circumstance, a business circumstance, it can feel very destabilizing. And we don't necessarily have the tools or the resources, not everybody, to then put yourself back together and step into that new identity. And particularly when you do have like a pattern of low self-esteem or low self-worth, and probably unconsciously, not everybody is even aware that that's their challenge. But when you do have that, naturally you tend to put your well-being quite low down the list of priorities. and instead you'll prioritize working, climbing the ladder, making more money, all of the things. So with the business owners that you work with, how do you get them to look at the wider picture and make sure that they are also prioritizing their well-being? Because a big part of all of this is that you have to feel calm, neutral, like have the capacity to receive and hold all of the amazing things that you're able to build. But if you don't have that, it's very difficult for you to be able to take the actions in your business and function like a fully functioning human being. So how do we get to that place?
I think the biggest misconception today is that we are being taught that well-being, self-care is like a morning routine or a bubble bath or something like that. But for me, well-being is the self-respect in the present moment. That to me is what well-being means. It's all about being. And if we can create a business that supports our well-being, it changes it creates a whole different business. Because you say yourself, as a business entrepreneur, you have got so many things that you need to do on your to-do list. So the last thing you want to do is still add more to your to-do list. A spa appointment, a walk on this. It just adds up and it feels completely overwhelming. But well-being for me is if you can honor and respect yourself enough in how you work, in what you say no to as an entrepreneur, what you say yes to as an entrepreneur, what feels good for you, and also be radically honest in how you feel and your capabilities. Because a lot of times we think that we have to push through. If we have to push through and still work 9 to 5 on the days that we really feel sick, you didn't create a business that supports your well-being. You just created another job.
Exactly. This is my whole ethos right now, honestly. Like my whole business is built around this. The phrase is like, you need to build a business that works for you, not one that you work for. And
Yes.
unfortunately, that comes through lived experience because I went completely the other direction. And I worked since I was 16. Like I didn't go to university. So like from a very early age, I worked in London. And I was conditioned to be in this like hustle culture, go mode, climb the ladder, work harder, da 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 da. That transferred over to when I then started my business. And because I didn't know any differently, I'd been doing this since I was 16 years old. I started my business when I was 28. Like I didn't know any different. So I essentially just fell straight back into that hustle mode, burnt out multiple times, said yes to things that would clearly not aligned for me, very mismatched, and had absolutely no boundaries. So I really had to learn the hard way to shift into this new way of being over the past, I'd say probably the past, when did I have that last burnout? 2022. So probably in the past 3-4 years, I've really shifted to make sure that my business is working for me, the lifestyle that I want to live. When I moved to Bali, for example, I built my business when I was in London in lockdown. And then I moved to Bali and continued running it in Bali. But I was running my online business, my consultancy for e-commerce businesses back then, on the same pace that I was trying to run in London, but on Bali time, which doesn't make any sense. So I had to really take a very hard look at myself and be like, that's not going to work here. You're going to have to like transition and figure this out and make your business work better for you, so that I was working smarter and not harder. And now I've gone through that experience a couple of times, to be perfectly honest with you. I now teach that in everything that I do. It's like not building a business that's just going to feel like another job, because otherwise what's the point? You might as well go back to your 9 to 5, build a business that actually accommodates for your lifestyle. How did you manage to do that? What was your personal transition for able to achieving that in your own life and business?
The same journey, burnt out, and then also being conditioned by saying you have to do more, you have to do more, you have to do more, but also your own belief. Because there's this beautiful quote saying that doesn't matter where you go, there you are. So when I stepped out of the corporate world and started my own business, I found that I'm doing exactly the same. I'm working 7 days a week, 18 hours a day. And why? Because now I've gone from the one little cage to the next little cage. And for me, it was always having that limiting belief of, not being enough. So it
Mm.
doesn't matter whatever I did in my business, I always felt that I needed to do more. So I really had to go back and look at my belief about myself. Because if you step, and a lot of people in my world, when they step from the corporate world into their own business, they find that they're doing the same. And it's nothing to do with the business itself. It's got to do with you bring your limiting beliefs, your habits, your conditioning, everything from the corporate into your business as well. And unless you change that core belief system, that operating system, will you have the business that feels like freedom? Will you have the life that feels like freedom? You are going to be run by that belief system, by that conditioning, and you're going to eventually burn out.
Definitely. I've experienced it way too many times. I've seen it happen with too many founders, and I'm really on a mission to try and change that and hope that more people can recognize that this doesn't have to be that way. Like, entrepreneurship doesn't have to feel hard. It doesn't have to feel like you're constantly up against a losing battle. Like, you can make it work for you. But I think that there is this, particularly if we think about like social media and like how can, even on social media, we're conditioned to hustle, we're conditioned to do certain things, we're conditioned to show up on Instagram, we're conditioned to follow the rule book of business when there is no rule book of business. There is no one size fits all approach to business. And it drives me crazy when I see people that push that, because more people need to understand that actually it starts with us. We are the person that's building the business. We are going to build the business based on what we believe about ourselves. And if we can strip that back and really look at like what makes us happy, how do we want to live, what would our ideal business look like to run, we will find our journey so much more enjoyable. That's been my personal experience, definitely. It's after going through all of the burnouts, rebuilding in a way that felt really good. And don't get me wrong, I'm not perfect. Like, even this morning, I had a little meltdown of like, oh my God, there's all of these things that I need to do. But this conversation, honestly, has really helped me remember what's most important. So I'm very grateful for you sharing all of this today. And just like, even if I know it, I just have to come back to it sometimes. I just have to hear it from a different perspective, right? So yeah, it's really important to keep having these conversations and keep showing people what is possible for them, because just like one little nugget of information that could have come out of this conversation today might help someone shift their direction, their whole business, that feels so much more enjoyable for them, which is really important.
I remember when I started my business, I was hustling. I was literally working 7 days a week, exactly the same as corporate. I was hardly making anything in my business because you're not taking care of yourself is actually doing your clients an injustice. Because my clients, years later, that I had in my first year of my business, I've actually sent an apology letter because I was so exhausted. I was so tired. I was so much in doing when I had my course with them that I wasn't fully present. But
Mm,
now I work 4 days a week and I go for beach walk every single morning. It's my non-negotiable because that allows me to be 100% fully present for all my clients. Each and every single one in my world gets 100% of my attention, and I get my attention. And then Friday, Saturday, Sundays, my son gets my attention. And working a fifth of what I did. And my business is generating 5 times more than what it did in the beginning.
yeah, absolutely. It's such a powerful shift to go from seeing where you were hustling hard and not making the money that you wanted to make, to like really enjoying your life and spending the day how you want to spend your day, structure your weeks around your priorities. And it can really change the way that you operate, because you're operating from a place of calm, neutral nervous system, and then you have the capacity to hold more success, hold more money, and that's naturally then going to come to you because you're more magnetic. You're able to attract the things that you want rather than constantly hustle to get them. So I think that's a really important message to remember, is that just because you're doing less does not mean you're earning less. It's actually, most cases, you're earning more. For anyone that is currently feeling like they are really out of alignment, or maybe they're in that weird identity, mid shift identity from one to another, or they just are feeling like they are burnt out and they need to make a change this year, what is one shift that you would recommend someone to do just to start them off on that new journey with a new lease of life?
You know, the one shift I always recommend, and I did it with all my clients in the beginnings of the year, is get crystal clear on who you want to be in 6 months' time.
Mm.
It's not about even your business. Who do you want to be as Alka? Who do you want to be as Sophie in 6 months' time? For me, I want to be the person that has created a new program that support women even further in their business. For me, I want to be the person that can afford to take my son on 5 international trips. Who do you want to be? What do you want to be like in 6 months' time? And every single day, take one tiny little action that supports that vision. Because every single thing that you do every day either takes you closer to who you want to be in 6 months' time, or it takes you further away. And with the conditioning of us being taught to not trust ourselves, we have lost that connection of what feels good to us. So get crystal clear on how do you want to feel? Who do you want to be? Paint that picture so powerful. And then be aware every day to take one tiny little step closer to that vision in 6 months' time. Because that builds self-trust. That brings you to that connection of yourself. Because if we don't walk forwards, we either stay stuck in the present or we stay stuck in the past.
Absolutely. That's excellent advice. I think we constantly just need that reminder of like, what is our future self looking like, and how can we take one tiny little step? Because I think a lot of people try and take giant leaps and bounds to try and get to that place. Me also guilty sometimes of trying to do that. And yeah, it just comes back down to like taking put one foot in front of the other, so that you can just keep walking on that path to that person, and eventually you will get to that end goal. Not that there's ever an end goal, but like that the next version of you, the next iteration that's about to be born. So I really appreciate your feedback on that and the advice that you've just shared. One thing before we close up, I always like to ask, obviously it sounds like you've really done a lot of work to help yourself be free of like the low self-esteem, low self-worth beliefs that you had previously. But I always like to understand, what does freedom really mean to you right now in this phase of your life?
Amala, freedom for me is true freedom means if I can have this beautiful relationship between my values, between the life that I'm created and with myself, being true to who I am, the person I want to be, and the values. And if I can bring that and live those three out fully, that to me is freedom.
I love that.
Freedom is not externally, it's a feeling inside.
It is indeed. I think a lot of people get confused by when you talk about freedom, what does it actually mean? But the reality is it has a different definition for every single person. But for me, true freedom is waking up feeling really like content and happy with yourself, your situation, all of the things that happen in your life. Because ultimately, if you don't have that, none of the other stuff really matters. So absolutely agree with you.
Yeah. And your values, if you are so crystal clear on your values and you live by your values, every decision you make in your life and in your business is based on your values. That to me is freedom.
Super true. Super true. If you can live to who you really are, that is the ultimate level of freedom. So I absolutely love that advice. I love everything that you shared today. I really resonate with your journey, and I really appreciate you taking the time to come on and talk about this, and also just giving me the reminder that I needed today to get my own ass into gear a little bit more and start being a bit more compassionate with myself on my own journey right now.
Sophie, love, thank you for having me. It's been an absolute fun morning. I absolutely loved it. Thank you so much. I'm super honored.
I loved that conversation with Alka today. It was exactly what I needed to hear, and I hope it was exactly what you needed to hear today. Whether it was a mindset shift or a deeper sense of self-worth or just a gentle reminder to stop trying to build your business from a place of pressure, I hope the conversation with Alka brought you back to why you do the work you do and why you're so passionate about doing amazing things that you do in your business. This has definitely brought me back to why I'm so passionate about helping other women build online businesses that feel like freedom and not another job. And if you are at the start of that journey, or you're ready to rebuild your business in a way that really supports you, I want to invite you to check out the Freedom Model Method Foundations. It's my signature program designed to help you get clear on what you want, how you want to work, and how to build an online business that actually works for you, one that fits around your life and not the other way around. It's not just another business course on how to start an online business. It's way deeper than that. It's deep energetic work, mindset work, combined with strategy, and really puts you in a position of self-leadership so that you can create real lasting freedom on your terms. If this episode resonated with you today and you know you're ready to do things differently, the link to join Foundations is in the show notes. Go and have a look and I'll hopefully see you inside. And thanks so much for being here and listening. Make sure if you like this episode to like, subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform, and I will catch you in the next one.